You know what I'm sick of? This false forced choose that supposedly exists between being authentic and creative and being financially successful. You hear it all the time. It's like you're either the starving artist or you're selling out. And I've heard this sentiment so much in the YouTube space. I heard a very popular YouTuber say, YouTube success comes down to how much of your creativity you are willing to sacrifice for the algorithm. But then I had a conversation with an even bigger YouTuber, whose name you would certainly recognize, and he said the complete opposite, and it was such an intriguing conversation that I want to go further in that route. So here's what you're gonna do. I want you to think of your creative project, like if you make YouTube videos or if you want to write a book, for example, I want you to think of it as like a present, like a Christmas present that you wrap. What you do is you give the present to someone in an easily recognizable format. It's kind of this formula that we give presents in boxes or bags with wrapping paper. Now, what's inside of it is very original. It might be completely off the beaten path, but if you were to give someone some candy, for example, and you put it inside of a baseball bat and you just set it somewhere random, you don't put it under the Christmas tree, no one's even going to know the intent of it or the purpose of it. And they might really like what's inside of it, but why would you wrap something in a baseball bat and put it in the garage? The way we deliver something and package something is very important. So in this metaphor, on the one hand, there might be the starving artist who is not delivering something in a format people understand, but the thing inside is really creative. Versus there's the person who is doing things for an algorithm, let's say, but when you open that book or when you watch that YouTube video, they're seeming a little dead behind the eyes. It's really lacking creativity, but somehow it's getting a lot of views. And that might be, in this analogy, like a Christmas present and inside's like a candle. It's given in a recognizable format, but you open it up and you're like, yeah, okay, we've seen this before. There's not really substance to this thing. So how can we, as creatives, if you're a YouTuber or an author, how can we be like a present? And the answer that I've come down to that was really game-changing for me when I had the conversation with this big YouTuber is the idea of templates. Now, if you've ever done, like as a kid, those Mad Libs, they've got this template, but you fill in adjectives, you fill in words, and so it kind of creates a different result each time. So we want to think of creativity in this way, and it's actually been shown that when you have more constraints on your creativity, you actually perform better and the output is more creative than when you had just complete free reign. So what do I mean by template? I believe this comes down to the way you present something when people first meet you. So as a YouTuber, for example, this would be the idea of a video, the title of a video, and the thumbnail of that video. As you go through YouTube, you'll see a lot of templates. For example, there's this template, you're not X, you're Y. You're not dumb, you just don't know the formula. And I could show so many examples of I've seen this template of this thing coming up a lot. And that's because that template works. The next thing is the thumbnail. If you look at, there are certain templates that do really well. So someone like holding a book completely covering their face, this comes up a lot. It also comes down to the hook of a video, which I found so intriguing that I actually have a little notebook that anytime I'm watching a video and I think, wow, this hook is very interesting, this first 15 seconds of this video is very compelling, I actually write down what the template is. For example, there might be a hook where they say, so you're feeling really overwhelmed and frustrated by just all these other tips, like to eat this and do this and do this. And you want something simple and easy that's going to have an amazing result but be incredibly easy to implement. If I watch that hook and I think this is really compelling, I think about what are the pieces of it, and then I might write it down in my little book. So if they say, so you're feeling really overwhelmed and frustrated, I might make a little Mad Lib type template for myself. So you're feeling X emotion because you're fed up with this tip, and this tip. Basically what that template is, a lot of tried and true things you've heard over and over and over again that we're tired of hearing. And you want something simple and easy. So again, I'm noting that this person is using the word you and not I. What are those adjectives? Okay, easy, simple. And all you want is, maybe it's a step-by-step plan to do X, Y, and Z. They want it to be a system so you can finally grow your YouTube channel or something like that. So that's the amazing result. So I just write down, this is a hook template, and you can apply that across niches. So maybe you're watching a cooking video and you're like, oh, this is a really compelling thing. And I can just kind of plug and play these different pieces. But the number one thing where you want to follow the formula side, and we're going to get to the creative side in a second, but the number one place where you want to follow this formula side is in the idea of the video generally. There are certain ideas that do really well, like 4 habits that changed my life. One that I used was set systems, not goals. That idea was incredibly popular a couple of years ago. 2 times now it's been my best performing video. So as I'm just casually scrolling YouTube, I pay attention to what are the idea trends, the title trends, the thumbnail trends, and then the hook. So I pay attention to those 4 things, and that is where you want to sacrifice your creativity. You want to give something to people in a recognizable format. So if you were an author, the first things people are going to notice is the title. So you want to look at title trends, the book cover, or even the structure of a book. So you got the structure of chapters. We're not going completely out of of the boat by getting rid of chapters. We have the typical character arc of the person. We have typical storyline. And so you keep the format the same, but within it, this is where the creativity is coming to play. So far, this has just been a lot of like formulas and templates, but where does the creativity part come in? As I'm scrolling through YouTube and I find these kind of trends, this structure that's doing really well, set systems, not goals. I take that idea, okay, this is a good title. Okay, what's the thumbnail? They generally have a flat lay. Okay, nice. So I'm gonna take that same idea and do that for mine. But the trick is I don't actually watch those videos because I want to be creative. So I actually made the set systems, not goal video, had a flip chart. It's completely different than these other videos, but I delivered it in a package that met this formula. And so that's why it ends up doing well. You start with the packaging people recognize, but what's inside is completely different. So here's a technique that I've used. I make two lists. One list I make of what titles are doing well right now. Like a while back, it could have been set systems, not goals, 4 habits that'll change your life, my time management method, 10 tips to be more productive. You know, there's this very kind of just boring in my opinion. And so these should be maybe like the top 15 performing videos. You look at other people in your niche, what titles are doing well. Then in the other column, you make a list of topics that you want to make videos about. So like I didn't want to make videos about 4 habits, for example. I don't care at all about habits. I'm really not a habit person. But I made a list of what do I care about. So I might think, oh, I just learned this Venn diagram system. That's kind of interesting. Or I really like this one goal setting technique. That's interesting. So you make a list of things that you're passionate about and things you actually want to make videos about. And then what you're going to try to do is try to match them and see how can I get this to kind of fit. So this is what I did with the set systems, not goals. I wanted to make a goal setting video, but the title set systems, not goals was doing really well. So I kind of matched that up. And if you watch the set systems, not goals video, a huge chunk of that video is actually about setting goals in addition to having a system. Or for example, I saw that the word habits was doing well. So I've got this video, like 4 habits that changed my life. I didn't really want to talk about habits. I don't really care about habits, but I had these 4 principles that were kind of interesting. And so I connected those two. So I have this video about 4 habits that changed your life. If you watch that video, it's not really quite habits because I didn't really want to talk about that, but it's just these principles. And I kind of packaged it in a way that made it seem like it was about habits. The reason for these formulas, what we're doing is we're meeting the viewer and the person where they're at. You draw them in with what they're familiar with and what they think they want. As people are getting into productivity, they think they want a bunch of habit stuff, but then you keep them there with what they actually need. Something that I used to do before I kind of realized this is I would think of an interesting idea or like an interesting system, and I would title the video with the name of that system. Like I'll just make something up, the Aragon method. So I would title the video that, but no one is searching for that. But what I found is that in my niche, a lot of times the title is something very tried and true. On the thumbnail, that is the place that does really well if you name something random. The preemptive momentum principle, the Aragon method, that does really well. So what I've started to do is then I'm like, well, if people want these kind of like fancy sounding names, I just give random names to things. In my niche, people like acronyms. I actually hate acronyms, but I've got on my channel now, I've got the START system and the risk method and all these things because they perform well. But what I found was as I went too far down this formula, I'm like, okay, this works. I started to get toward that point where it was really lacking substance. It's really lacking the creativity. My focus right now is now trying to get back to that. I think when people start out on a creative project, there's this tendency where they want to be creative. That's what fulfilled in the first place. But then there's this frustration with no metrics. So there's all this education's pursuit of these metrics to try to kind of learn this formula. Then as you learn this formula, you kind of drop the creativity. And so now what is important to do is now bring both of those back. I think it's very similar with music. Like for example, if you write an album, you sprinkle in things that people want. Like for example, if you think of Taylor Swift, her rise to fame was really a lot of big pop songs like Shake It Off or Blank Space. But really, if you look at what the fans really prefer, it's all these deep cuts, kind of these emotional songs that never ended up on the radio with a lot of different writing. But people would have never found out about those more deep songs if those bangers had never been out there. So you really have to balance this and understand that there's a purpose for different things. And a lot of times things that really reach the masses are not necessarily the things of best quality or that the true fans really like the most, but it's all part of this funnel to make sure that you're reaching the masses as well as deepening the relationship that you have with the audience. As an outro of this video, I'm going to do one of these templates that you've probably heard me say, and I heard this was a good template from copywriting, so here's the template. Template is, so you heard me just talk about X, but it's incomplete if I don't talk about Y. So what you need is video Z to get into it. So like, I'll just give this example. So I mentioned that you can be creative while being successful at the same time, but these tactics are generally not good enough if we don't have the motivation. We don't have that spark within us to be creative in the first place. So if you would like more of this spark, I really recommend this video that I made about this book, Wishcraft by Barbara Sher, where I share 5 lessons in it, and it's a book that really got me out of a slump.